I think we lost the first version of the live chat, so I'm just going to continue. We're talking about altered states, and we started off with a toast to those that have made all of this possible. And then I also gave a quick summary of some of the keynote topics that people have asked me. What are we going to be talking about in the days and weeks ahead of time? And I'm jumping right into how we communicate with ourselves, our families, when we look at war, okay? So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to capture that previous video, the first part, and I've labeled this one Altered States Part B. But we're going to go right in, and I was talking about a number of countries that right now war has literally devastated families, have devastated economic opportunities, whether it's the Democratic Republic of Congo, Yemen, Nigeria, Syria, Afghanistan. Many of us know that for decades the British have been kicked out twice, the Americans at least twice, Russians twice. We keep trying to control, colonize this country. Somalia, Mexico, Pakistan, Egypt, Ethiopia, Libya. So where do these people go? Some obviously stay. Many migrate. They go across borders. They try to get asylum in other countries. And I did some quick research to look at how the communication, once a country is in such disruption, and what we can learn as individuals. Many of us, I'm sure, come from these countries. America is the melting pot, always has been. Yet the policies may be very different. For example, when I came, my parents sponsored me. So the government knew my parents were educated, they had good jobs, and they were sponsored by their brothers and sisters. For us as children, at a young age, we were allowed to be sponsored by them. They were our caregivers. So what is the message that we get from that? That's where I'm going with this. We talk about war, we talk about disruption, we talk about wicked disruption. That's an actual term. It's like a tsunami, right? It comes, it wipes out everything that you pretty much built, and it also challenges your understanding of what is and what isn't, what is possibly enduring and what is not. So war is a great conversation piece to talk about effective communication. So now when you do come to these countries and you're bringing your own culture, how do you assimilate? How did we assimilate? Well, we stayed with our own groups, by and large. Because of my accent, I was able to move into different circles. I was able to get into jobs relatively quickly. And then I decided to identify groups that I wanted to be around. I also learned that in America, there's a system whereby if you are sponsored, you have a greater propensity to be mobile throughout other economies. Whereas in other countries, that wasn't the case. Even though you might even be born in this country, the right to get a citizenship might take you literally 20 years. In other countries, especially Canada, their population is so small that they need the immigrant and migrant workers to fulfill the economic needs of the country, while at the same time, the social becomes very interesting because people are going to marry into, we call it interrace, but it's people are going to marry into nationalities and cultures, okay? So how can we be intelligent about this? That's my point for the discussion when we talk about altered states. Just as in the beginning I had shared with you this robot that's been depicted by Boston Dynamics on LinkedIn. The intelligent, an approach, I won't say just the only one, but an approach is to understand that that robot could be used in places of danger, of risk, high risk, of long-term exposure, loneliness, interplanetary space travel, and even oceanic depth, because that's a very claustrophobic environment when you're in the darkness of the ocean. Well, how can we use and learn from how immigrants survive, resilience, if you will? Well, there's a great book. I want to share this one with you. It's Reframing Your True Identity, The Power of Vulnerability, right? We know that in psychology, when someone is abducted, course, there's fear, there's shock, there's denial. Then there's a, how can I get out of this? Then there's another stage of acceptance. The acceptance is only subject to, could I maneuver the gambit part to get out at a later date? So that's a desire, a belief that somehow, some way, I don't have the answer yet, I can get out of this. Well, many people in this economy feel pain and suffering. You know, I've used those terms before. Pain is when your world has been disrupted. You're not sure what's going on, it's been disrupted, and that's painful. Suffering is when you don't have a possible solution. Now understand, with war, no solutions. Really? You must look at some of these immigrants and migrant workers who come out of these environments and flourish with a sense of, whether it's spirituality, I'll go there. I have no problem with that. Because without that, I don't think we exist. And then there's a dogmatic attitude of, I can build something out of this. I don't want to go back. A lot of people say, well, I want my old life. Good luck. Evolution moves us forward, not duplicating the past. They can build something out of it. And if you look at, take some time, look up those refugee camps in Syria, in the Congo, in Nigeria, in Latin America. Hell, look at some of the tent cities in America. And you'll see a resilience of people that say, I'm here, I find myself here, not because I did something wrong, not because I decided to substitute one pain for another with substance abuse, which it is. I'm going to make something out of this. That's the message. That's the communication with yourself. And even though every single minute of every day you are grinding it out with the fighting in your head, the conversation in your head, you're fighting it. Yes, you're fighting it. At the end of the day, okay, you put down your weapons, you rest a moment, you take off that, as I say, crocodile skin, right, to go into battle. Make sure you have that rhino hide underneath the crocodile skin, because life can be a little traumatic there. You say to yourself, what did I do? What different attitude, action, what did I bring to the table? What did I do differently that I didn't do yesterday? That's what we can learn from people who come out of these traumatic situations. There's another book. This, by the way, I don't know if I gave you the full description. Pasha, P-E-Y-S-H-A, Mark and Chloe Medanes. This is Reclaiming Your True Identity and Power of Vulnerability. When you find yourself threatened, fear, anger, frustration, then you start saying, what is the meaning of this? What can I do to reduce, get out? Then there's an acceptance. Then there's a strategy of long-term objectives. That's where you need to be, so that you don't stay in the pain, suffering mode and think that's all that's going to happen and I have no options. That's one book. And then there's another book I found here in my list. I always keep these lists. I write so many down. This is Glaser W and Glaser C. 8 Lessons for a Happier Marriage. Yes, I said it, happier marriage. Been married 24 years. I hope to get another 24 out of this beautiful person, Miriam. And it's, to me, it's private. At the same time, I can share with you that if you want to make that relationship work. Now, if the other person doesn't, I am the first person to say, I'm on my bike, mate. I'm out of here. See ya. Because I'm not willing to struggle with someone who doesn't want it, the relationship, me, the person, right? It's that simple. Now, some people struggle with that. So, altered states. One, we can learn from immigrants, other nationalities who are going through war, tumultuous change. Change that their relationships, their family destroyed, devastated, taken away. Whereas most of us in this country, it's more of an economic and certainly the emotional attachment, the meaning we subscribe to it. Do you want to change that? That's the question. Do you want to reprogram yourself and the meaning you've given it to look at another part of yourself? Because remember, there are many personalities in you. A lot of people say, oh, you're bipolar. Great. I have full-blown conversations. I answer myself and I bring in multiple personalities. Absolutely. Because that's what it takes for me to move forward. What does it take for you? Are you courageous and brave enough to acknowledge that you do have those characteristics? Are you using them? How many characteristics do you think it takes for a mother who loses a child to get through and rebuild their life? How many characteristics or personalities do you think it takes a father who loses their whole family in a war, who comes back from fighting a war and finds their family, their town destroyed? That's what I'm referring to. You see, it's not this, oh, the TV didn't work, oh, the car broke down, or, you didn't have the game of the day, or the child's acting up in the store. The child would walk home. Let's get real. Let's look at life in its totality. Let's look at the planet and look how people have to manage extreme states and still have a smile, have a countenance of pride, and not this artificial me nonsense. A lot of people complain about millennials. They're just a drop in the bucket. In fact, a drop in the ocean. Their time will come and pass. It probably has already, quite frankly. I know a lot of people like to talk about them like they're the next great generation. You can, no problem. I think that's wonderful, if it serves your purpose. If it doesn't, and you're hiding behind it, like many parents do, hide behind their children, well, this child is going to do these wonderful things because I never could, and quite frankly, I've given up. I say don't bother having the child. It's another expression I'd use, but on public media here, I'd like to keep you as a fan. I can be a little abrasive when it comes to that kind of disassociation of parents from their true selves and what they are projecting on their children. I'm using this conversation, Altered States, to identify people in countries that are going through traumatic change, traumatic disruption, to realign our priorities, realize that we are not going through what they are going through. What can we learn from them, those that manage to make life, repurpose life, recontextualize their life, and get back and grow? Because that is the human condition. That really is the human condition. So unfortunately, I think the first half of this video was disconnected. I don't know if I'll be able to get it back because the Facebook chat just dropped right off. If not, then I will post this one and we will always move forward, because that is managing change. This is Ronald Allen, managing change through strategic and effective communications. You know where to find me.